Bloodborne is a strange game. I had played nothing like it, not because of its uncompromising and unforgiving difficulty, not because of its intense horror atmosphere and setting, not even particularly because of the content of the story, but because of the way the story is presented to you, and that is in a way so subtle it is basically not at all. I know it wasn't the first to do it, but in my opinion it is the perfect example. I have to begin by saying I hate cutscenes, or more importantly, I hate the way cutscenes are used in modern games. I have no patience for them at all. Instead of using gameplay as a way to make me actually want to play a game or care about characters or backstories, game makers tend to decide I need to learn about that the old-fashioned way, by watching a 20 to 30 minute movie about what's going on. Most of the time I end up skipping them and having no idea what is going on, or sitting there wondering why this isn't a movie and turning the game off just because I want to use the controller. You hear the term ludonarrative dissonance a lot these days, but I think a better term for this type of thing would be non-ludonarrative. A lot of games don't try to tell a story within the game at all. Of course there is still a story being told, it's just that the story the writers want you to hear is basically just a movie using the game's characters. Bloodborne is different. Yes, it has an introduction cutscene, but it lasts just 2 minutes and 24 seconds, or 2 hours if you are making the perfect character, and it makes absolutely no sense. It is the perfect encapsulation of everything I love about Bloodborne's story. This game has one of the greatest handcrafted, intricate stories with likable badass characters and warring factions and heartbreak, and it just does not give a shit whether you know about it or not. Inspired by Miyazaki's childhood reading English language novels without a full grip on the language, the narrative takes place largely within the narrative of the player character's imagination, rather than in cutscenes. Although the extremely well-written item descriptions make it so that you will come off with broadly the same story as everyone else, and the one Miyazaki intended to tell. Firstly, your character doesn't have a voice, and even better than that, as the player you rarely even know what the things you are saying to the people you're talking to. You clearly ask about pale blood in the introduction, but you have no idea what it is. The minister you're asking has no idea either, or at the very least won't tell you, and tells you Yharnam is the right place, and to unravel its mystery. After some more weird symbolically important stuff, you're sent on your way, and that's it. In terms of motivation beyond a letter on the chair telling the intended reader, who may or may not be you, to seek pale blood and transcend the hunt. That's the only story-based motivation for playing the game at all. There are a few more short cutscenes you're forced to watch in the game, but they make more or less just as little sense to someone who isn't familiar with the overarching story. You can play through the entire game, kill all the crazy bosses, use some amazing weapons and wear some hilarious armor, and not learn another thing, and that is completely fine. That's how I played the game before the DLC, and I absolutely loved it. I wasn't forced into anything. But then after realizing I'd missed half the optional bosses, and doing a second playthrough in New Game Plus, I started digging. I watched the 30-minute video by Vidya and was completely blown away. Everything he said made sense, but I got the feeling he must have been making it all up. Was everything he said really in the game I had played? It seemed like he was living in a completely different realm, but only later I realized even he was still lying only on the surface. After learning that the stories in the item descriptions and the world building, my view changed completely. When I played the game, I put myself in the shoes of my hunter, as if I was a detective at the scene of the crime trying to piece things together. Every item I found, I read the description immediately, noting its location and use. I thought about why that item would be there and how the person holding it had got it. When talking to Gilbert, I asked myself what my character would say. Well, they'd ask about pale blood, and so he tells us to cross the Great Bridge to the Grand Cathedral. After finding the door locked, we come back and tell him, and he says we could try the aqueduct in the shady part of town. My mind was blown. I was playing the same game, but suddenly everything I did had much more meaning, and a meaning that I had discovered not because it was shoved down my throat, but because I had taken the time to explore and look for it myself. Even the outfit I was wearing became instantly recognizable as a healing church outfit, based on the shawl on my back. Something I was staring at the entire game went right over my head. Exploring the world in Bloodborne is akin to visiting a deserted or abandoned town after a long, slow decline, and having to put the story together through a series of disjointed journal entries with different authors, or you can just get the hell out of there as fast as possible. I read The Pale Blood Hunt, and although I disagreed with a lot of Redgrave's personal opinions, I found his presentation of the facts to be overwhelmingly precise. I watched hours upon hours of JSF's Bloodborne Up Close videos, and was blown away again by the sheer level of detail in every enemy and every environment. His interpretation of their real-world inspiration and meaning lend an even deeper context beyond the in-game item descriptions. I read and reread all the descriptions and had detailed discussions with the amazing community on Reddit about their interpretations of the story. I looked at all the environments as closely as I could and bought the art book, and was completely amazed at this world I now understood so well through completely optional content. When the DLC dropped, it was like playing a different game entirely. I knew exactly what it was trying to say. I knew what each item and enemy was, and where it fit with the timeline. I felt I truly did need to unearth the secrets of the old hunters, and to this day that DLC is probably my most enjoyable gaming experience of all time. Thank you Bloodborne and From Software for showing me story games don't have to try to be movies. Thank you Vatividia, Redgrave and JSF for showing me the depth, and thank you for watching.